If stories of resilience and finding your own path resonate with you, we invite you to join our supportive community on the Tales List channel. My name is Emily. I'm 38 years old, and I'm the founder of a successful sustainable textiles company based in Asheville, North Carolina. The story I'm about to share begins with a letter, a single handwritten page that severed the deepest bond I knew, and ends with a doorbell ring a decade later that tested everything I had built without them. It's a story about inheritance, but not just of money. It's about the legacy of self-worth you choose to claim when the people who should love you unconditionally attach a price tag to that love. This is how I learned that family isn't always who you're born to, but who you choose, and that the most valuable estate you can build is one of peace within your own four walls. The disownment arrived not with a dramatic shout, but with the quiet finality of cream-colored stationery slipped under my apartment door in New York City. I was 28. My father had passed 6 months prior after a long illness, leaving behind a modest but meaningful estate. My mother's letter was succinct. It stated that my refusal to sign over my share of the inheritance, a roughly $150,000 portion from a life insurance policy, and the sale of the family home, to my younger sister, Jessica, for what my mother called her greater need, constituted a perfect problem. Betrayal of family duty. The final line is etched in my memory. If you choose money over your sister's well-being, you are no longer a daughter of mine. There was no phone call, no discussion. Jessica had always been the volatile one, the paper market project, while I was the stable, reliable child. My stability, it seemed, had made me disposable. The pain was a physical thing, a hollowing out of my chest that made it hard to breathe for weeks. I had just used part of that inheritance as a down payment on a small loft space to launch my textile business, a dream my father had encouraged. Giving it to Jessica, who cycled through careers and partners with alarming speed, felt like pouring my future into a sieve. Yet the guilt was immense. Was I being selfish? Was financial prudence just a pretty excuse for betrayal? I sought therapy, where I slowly began to untangle the knot of obligation from the thread of self-preservation. My therapist asked a pivotal question. If the situation were reversed, would your mother or sister sacrifice their security for you? The silence in my own heart was answer enough. With a resolve born of both grief and fury, I committed to making the inheritance work for me. This wasn't just about keeping money. It was about vindicating my choice, proving that I could steward this legacy into something greater. I lived frugally in a tiny apartment, plowing every spare cent back into the business. I studied investing, starting with low-cost index funds and gradually moving into more strategic ventures, focusing on green technology and sustainable infrastructure, areas I believed in. The $150,000 wasn't a lottery win, it was my seed capital, my army, and I deployed it with the precision of a general. The loneliness was brutal, especially on holidays, but it forged a steeliness in me I didn't know I possessed. 5 years passed. My company, Woven Roots, found its niche, creating biodegradable packaging materials that caught the eye of several major retailers. The initial investment grew steadily. I didn't just save money, I learned its language: compound interest, tax-advantaged accounts, real estate equity. I bought a small, distressed property in a then up-and-coming Asheville neighborhood, renovated it myself on weekends, and sold it for a profit. I repeated the process. The inheritance was no longer a static sum, it was a living, growing entity. And with each success, the phantom ache of my family's absence transformed. It never left, but it became a quiet companion rather than a screaming wound. The mansion was never the goal. The goal was security, permanence, a testament to what I had built alone. When I first saw the old craftsman-style estate on the outskirts of Asheville, it was neglected, its gardens overgrown, but its bones were solid. It sat on 5 acres, with a view of the Blue Ridge Mountains. The price, due to its need for total renovation, was within the realm of possibility thanks to my carefully grown portfolio. The deciding moment came as I walked through the dusty, sunlit conservatory. I imagined it filled with plants, with light, with the peace I had carved out for myself. I made an all-cash offer, closing the deal without a mortgage. The freedom of that act, owing nothing to anyone, was more intoxicating than the house itself. The renovation became my therapy. For 2 years I worked with architects and contractors during the day, and sanded floors, painted walls, and designed gardens by evening. I made the house a reflection of my values: sustainable, handcrafted, filled with light and books and art collected from my travels. It was my sanctuary. A small, close-knit community of friends I had made in Asheville became my chosen family. They celebrated holidays with me, helped plant the orchard, and knew parts of my story. I built a life that was full, purposeful, and on my own terms. The mention of my birth family became rare, a distant chapter in a book I was no longer reading. The decade mark of our estrangement came and went. I sometimes wondered about them, my mother and Jessica. A part of me still hoped for a letter of apology, a recognition of the pain they'd caused. But another, larger part, had made peace with the silence. I had built a fortress of my own making, not just of wood and stone, but of resilience. Then, on a crisp autumn Saturday, the doorbell rang. I was pruning roses in the front garden, covered in dirt, my hair in a messy bun. Through the gate, I saw them, my mother, looking older and more fragile than I remembered, and Jessica, who still had that restless, hungry look in her eyes. Time seemed to slow, then lurch forward violently. They stood on the other side of the iron gate, their eyes wide as they took in the property, the gardens, the scale of the house behind me. The calculation in their gaze was immediate and unmistakable. It wasn't warmth, it wasn't remorse, it was an appraisal. My mother spoke first, her voice thin. "Emily, we heard you were doing well. We wanted to see you." Jessica chimed in with a brittle smile. "Yeah, Em, you look great." "This place is incredible." I didn't open the gate. I stood there, pruning shears in my hand, feeling the ghost of that 28-year-old's pain rise up, only to be met by the 38-year-old's hard-won calm. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice steady. What followed was a stumbling, transparent performance. They talked about family bridges and lost time, but their eyes kept wandering to the house. My mother mentioned how hard things had been, how Jessica had struggled. Then came the pivot. Jessica's latest venture, a can't-fail franchise opportunity, required a significant investment. My mother's pension wasn't enough. They needed help. "Just a loan," Jessica said quickly. "We know you have the means now." The subtext screamed louder than their words. "We see what you have. We believe we have a right to it." The conversation I had rehearsed in my head 1,000 times, the confrontation, the cheers, the accusations, simply evaporated. In its place was a profound, clarifying disappointment. I didn't invite them in. I stood my ground on my side of the gate, the boundary both literal and symbolic. "You ended our relationship over money," I said, remarkably calm. "You told me I was no longer your daughter because I wouldn't give mine away. Now, 10 years later, you're on my doorstep because you want more money. Do you not see the irony?" My mother's face flushed with a mix of shame and indignation. "That was a long time ago. Can't you let bygones be bygones? We're family." That word, coming from her mouth, felt like a betrayal of its very meaning. "Family doesn't disown you for making a sound financial decision," I replied. "Family doesn't show up a decade later with a handout." Jessica's mask slipped first. "Oh, don't act so high and mighty, Emily. You got lucky with Dad's money and now you're sitting in your castle looking down on us." There it was, the resentment, the narrative they'd built to justify their actions. I hadn't gotten lucky. I'd worked and strategized and sacrificed while nursing a broken heart. My mother didn't correct her. She just looked at me, her expression now fully one of entitlement. After everything we've been through, the least you could do is help your sister. In that moment, any last, lingering hope for a genuine reconciliation died. This wasn't about reconnection, it was a financial extraction mission. I took a deep breath, the mountain air filling my lungs with the certainty of my own choices. No, I said, the word clear and final. I will not be giving you any money, not a loan, not a gift. The relationship you ended 10 years ago is still ended. I built this life without you, and I will continue to live it without you. My mother's eyes hardened. So, that's it? After all I did for you growing up? The guilt trip, the oldest tool in her arsenal, landed with a dull thud against my resolve. You also abandoned me when I needed you to respect me as an adult, I said. Please leave my property. They left, of course, with protests and slammed car doors, shouting about ingratitude as they sped down the driveway. I watched the dust settle, the shears still in my hand. I expected to feel a surge of victory, or maybe a wave of grief. Instead, I felt a quiet, profound peace. The final thread had been cut. I walked back into my house, through the rooms I had shaped, and felt not an ounce of their energy within it. The sanctuary remained intact. That evening, I called my closest friends, the ones who had become my family, and they came over with food and wine. We sat in the conservatory, now lush and green, and I told them what happened. Their support was unconditional, a mirror reflecting the healthy relationships I had cultivated. In the days that followed, I considered the legalities. I contacted my lawyer to ensure my estate planning was ironclad, explicitly naming the charitable foundations and a few dear friends as beneficiaries. I wasn't paranoid, just thorough. I also installed a new security gate with a camera system, not out of fear, but for the peace of mind that comes with clear boundaries. The incident, rather than destabilizing me, served as the ultimate validation. I had been right a decade ago to protect my future, and I was right now to protect my peace. Their appearance was the last echo of a past life, and it faded quickly in the vibrant reality I inhabited. The experience prompted deep reflection on what family truly meant. I realized I had been mourning an ideal, not the reality. The reality was conditional love, transactional relationships, and emotional manipulation. The family I had built in Asheville, friends, mentors, even my dedicated employees, operated on mutual respect, shared values, and authentic affection. They celebrated my successes without envy, and supported me in failures without judgment. This was the connection I had craved all along. I started hosting regular gatherings at the house, making it a hub for this chosen family, filling its rooms with the laughter and warmth that blood relations had failed to provide. Professionally, the encounter strangely fueled a new phase of growth. With the last emotional tie to my past severed, I felt a renewed creative freedom. I launched a foundation through Woven Roots that mentors young women from difficult backgrounds in financial literacy and entrepreneurship. I called it the Root Capital Fund, focusing on giving others the seed money opportunity I'd had, but pairing it with the guidance I'd lacked. It became my most meaningful work, a way to transform my inherited pain into someone else's ladder. The mansion became more than a home. It hosted fundraising galas and strategy weekends, its purpose expanding beyond my own solitude. A year after their visit, I received one more letter from my mother. This one was typed, from a lawyer. It was a formal, politely worded request for family assistance, citing hardship. Likely a last-ditch effort to establish a paper trail, or elicit a sympathetic response they could leverage. I didn't respond. My lawyer did, with a single sentence acknowledging receipt and stating there would be no further communication. The silence that followed was permanent. I had finally reached the stage where their absence was not a wound, but a neutral fact, like the weather in a city I no longer visited. Now, at 40, My life bears little resemblance to the one I might have had if I'd capitulated a decade ago. The mansion is paid for, the business thrives, and my days are filled with purpose and people I genuinely love. I travel, I create, I contribute. A lesson is seared into my soul. You cannot buy family love, and you should never have to sell your future to rent it. The most powerful inheritance I received wasn't the money from my father, but the resilience I discovered in myself when everyone else walked away. That resilience built everything you see. To anyone listening who faces similar pressure, who is told that blood obligates you to self-sacrifice, please know this: setting a financial boundary is an act of self-love, not betrayal. Investing in your own stability isn't greed, it's the foundation from which you can actually help others from a place of abundance, not depletion. And sometimes, the family you lose makes space for the family you find. The one that chooses you, champions you, and I walk to the door of the pain and stare at a pace in the bed with brain. Your peace is worth protecting, even if it means protecting it from those who share your name. My story is ultimately one of reclamation. I reclaimed my father's legacy from being a point of conflict and turned it into a force for growth. I reclaimed my self-worth from the conditional approval of my mother. I reclaimed the concept of home from a place of obligation to a sanctuary of my own creation. The mansion is simply the physical manifestation of that inner work, a structure built on a firm foundation, able to weather any storm. It stands as my answer to their disownment, not with bitterness, but with silent, steadfast proof of a life well lived on my own terms. I still think of my father often. I like to believe he would be proud, not just of the material success, but of the integrity with which I handled it all. He was a quiet, principled man who believed in fairness. I honored his memory not by blindly following a dysfunctional family directive, but by stewarding his gift with the care and wisdom it deserved. In the quiet of my study, surrounded by his old books that I inherited, I feel his presence as one of support, not condemnation. That connection, though he is gone, feels more real than any strained relationship with the living, who only see me as an asset. The journey taught me that no is a complete sentence, and that guilt is often the price of setting a healthy boundary. You pay it once, and then you're free. I paid mine in a decade of loneliness and hard work, and now I live in the freedom it purchased. The money was just the tool. The real wealth was in learning to trust my own judgment above the clamor of familial expectation. It was in building a life so full and authentic that the emptiness they left behind was eventually filled with something better, something real. If my mother or sister ever hear this, I doubt they'll recognize themselves in the story. They'll see themselves as wronged and me as heartless. That's okay. My peace no longer depends on their understanding. Our narratives diverge equally that day 10 years ago. They chose a story of betrayal and entitlement. I chose a story of resilience and creation. And while theirs seems to have led them back, hungry to my gate, mine led me to a mountaintop, literally and figuratively, with a view I wouldn't trade for anything. If you've ever had to choose between family expectations and your own well-being, know that you're not alone. We share stories like these on the Tales List channel to remind each other that our paths, though sometimes lonely, can lead to profound strength and peace. Thank you for listening to mine.